He was very ultra well connected, super wealthy guy. And what Bitcoin is, it's like gold. It's like digital gold. It can't be printed from thin air.
We are, unfortunately, are not. We have a benevolence program, but it is for our members.
One of the greatest threats facing our country today, Islamic extremism.
Because now this person was supposed to be some kind of spy.
There was a big embassy scandal.
When you get when they released a lot of these documents, they were, what is it, redacted? You had,
I think there is $1 billion propaganda. Hey, listen, Muslims aren't bad, but we do need their help for the Muslims in their community. I mean, every day I see a dozen people, they want to bring Sharia. They can't even define Sharia. The goal is to dehumanize Muslims. Imagine somebody being 10,000 miles away and saying, yes, my religion tells me that
who was like, Bruce, don't fall for the Taqiyya. Imagine someone like Charlie Kirk, who's very intelligent. Greetings of peace. My next guest, CEO of Chainstone Labs. He's a leading tech investor with over 30 years experience. He recently ran for US Senate. He's a Bitcoin expert hosting the very first Bitcoin conference in Dubai. Welcome to my next guest, Bruce Fenton.
This is the Dean Show. This is the Dean Show.
Bruce, how are you?
Great. Good to see you, Eddie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for accepting the invitation. And it's a pleasure. Did I get that right? You were running for senator, Bitcoin expert. They even called you the father of Bitcoin. Is that right, in Dubai?
Yeah, that's about right. Yep, that's it was a few years ago. It's 3 years already since I ran for Senate. Mm-hmm. But it seems like yesterday in some ways. But the world is changing a lot. So, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Came from the financial world, but very passionate about human freedom and human rights and that kind of thing.
I have a lot of questions to ask you. I want to go over some of your tweets, get your reaction to some current things that are happening right now as we speak. There's some breaking news coming out. The House Oversight Committee released some new Epstein emails. Have you been following this over the years, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been following it. I'm a big fan of Thomas Massie. He's and that's my politics, by the way. He's probably like almost exactly like my politics. I ran as a Republican, but I'm really totally disgusted by a lot of the things that the Republicans do. There's a lot of things that I really strongly disagree with. There's some things I disagree with the president on, for sure. But Massey is right on a lot of things, and he was right on this, and he was one of probably the main member of Congress that was pushing for more transparency on this. What exactly is our relationship with Epstein, foreign governments, this kind of thing. So, and it was coming close. Part of the reason the government was shut down was probably to kind of cover this up because he needed other members of Congress to push for this transparency. So I think that this latest move is probably, maybe a little bit of damage control. They're trying to release more things because they know that it's coming anyway. But yeah, I mean, it's, certainly beyond fishy and beyond evil. It's something everybody should be concerned about. And we shouldn't be in this kind of world where we all just shrug like it's a third world country and say, oh yeah, we know everything's corrupt. There's nothing we can do about it. That's not the way America's supposed to be. We just have evidence that also came out this week that a Capitol police officer was involved with this J6, the narrative that we were told on J6. So there's a lot of, and a lot of people who followed either Epstein, J6, a lot of other things where there's been a lot of kind of mass establishment lying. And that includes things like the Iraq war and Afghanistan war as well. They really need to look at it and say, well, wait a minute, our government is lying. Our media is lying. What is the truth? And we've got to accept that it's a lie first. So, Epstein is center. I mean, it became a meme. Epstein didn't kill himself. And then what happens? The new guy gets in the FBI and says, oh yeah, Epstein killed himself. Everybody knows that's not the case. And so the first step, hopefully, in healing and getting transparency is recognizing the problem on these things like Epstein.
For the audience that they're really not up to date, like, what is this Jeffrey Epstein that's all over the news? People who are maybe from a different part of the world and they're not really up to date on this. Can you just break it down for the layman? What's all this controversy over Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein? And then And then you got emails now with Trump and everything else.
Yeah, he was very ultra well connected, super wealthy guy who had the who's who of the halls of power coming and visiting him, and then he was caught with that it was basically abuse of underage people, and horrific crimes. There's real victims that were victims of sex assaults and other things by some of the who's who of the world and the global elite. You know, and a lot of people went down there, and it was a big cover up. Bill Clinton, and this I'm not picking on Clinton. This is Republicans and Democrats, to be clear. But I've asked people, and those people listening, take your best friend who doesn't live in your town, or a place you really really love, your favorite vacation spot. How many times have you been there in the last 10 years? It's probably 10 times, maybe 20. Bill Clinton went to Epstein's Island 34 times.
34 times.
Yeah, and the island wasn't the only place. The island is famous, but Epstein had places all over. He had a big place in New York City, and there's prominent people that were caught leaving, his residences. His places were known as the kind of place that you go to do degenerate things, and in many cases illegal, deeply illegal, and always immoral things. And then to make it worse, they said that he killed himself in jail, and it just didn't hold water. There's a lot of holes in that story, and it became the meme. Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself because it didn't seem like he did. Everybody with common sense said, "Oh, that doesn't sound right. Sounds like somebody killed him." And when you think about that, that opens up more doors. Well, okay, how were they able to get away with it? How was somebody that powerful get away with murder? And why did they murder him? Probably because he was going to say things that would embarrass a lot of people. And then the FBI, there was a lot of movement on the Republican side for Trump to say, let's get to the truth. And the FBI said they were going to get to the truth, and the Attorney General. And then they went in and said, no, everything's fine. And that annoyed a lot of people, and they lost a lot of their support. They had a lot of their biggest supporters they even did a photo op with some of the biggest Republican supporters went out and were holding these files. They're like, look, we've got the files. And then the FBI came and said, oh, there's nothing in it. There's nothing to it. And that bothered a lot of people because they feel like they're being lied to, and they are.
Okay, so this is an island where people go and do immoral things. You mentioned, what is it, 34 times that you had the former president there. So has Thomas Macy or any other politicians from Congress, Senate, have any of them made the connection and say, hold on, we have certain people that were there, and now possibly they have been captured because now this person was supposed to be some kind of spy, and now they recorded, they got pictures, and now these politicians, these elites, certain people who are supposed to be serving public interests, and now they got blackmail on them. Is this something that Thomas Macy and others have concrete evidence that there's certain people right now in certain positions, and possibly these people now are dictating certain laws, legislation in a certain direction because they were on the island?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure somebody has that concrete evidence. I haven't seen it yet, but it certainly seems to have all the hallmarks of exactly that kind of operation. A honeypot kind of operation. This isn't some new invention. This is something.
Honeypot? What's that? Honeypot?
Honeypot is like it means a trap designed like honey. You put honey in a trap.
Yeah.
It's a trap designed to catch people.
Wow.
And intelligence services has been doing this for a long time. The Americans and the Russians and the Chinese and others. It's a known thing. Mata Hari was a spy, decades and decades and decades ago, that was, that would trap men. And I mean, the U.S. Marines, there was a big embassy scandal 25 years ago or so where these, attractive women were seducing the Marines so that they could get them to, give them access to the embassy. So these things happen. It's a known thing. And this Epstein operation has all the hallmarks of it. His partner in this, Ghislaine Maxwell, who's in jail for this, her father was a Mossad agent. Her father, Robert Maxwell, So she came from kind of a spy family. It's not uncommon for people who are spies to have their kids be involved with sort of the family business. They have all the connections, they have all the, and there's a lot of money and power when you go at that level. So there was a lot of speculation that because her father was a Mossad agent, she was also. Israel denied that, which of course. But Epstein, he had a lot of ties with Israel. It's been speculated a lot, and it's very interesting because you remember when all this announcement came out that it was no big deal. Who was in the office that day? Netanyahu. Look up the calendar. The very week. So the president ran under this platform saying there was going to be transparency. Many of the best supporters of him, diehard Republican MAGA people, influencers with millions of followers, were saying they want the truth on this. And they sort of had the rug pulled from under them. And then all of a sudden the FBI director came out and said, oh, there's nothing here. Who was in the White House right at that moment? Netanyahu was. Look at the calendar. Look at the announcement and look who came to the White House the day before. So it's not a crazy conspiracy theory to think that Netanyahu came and said, hey, bury this, please, Mr. President. We're allies. I don't want this out there. I mean, it certainly has all the hallmarks of it. I don't have any special evidence. I'm just a regular citizen who can speculate like anybody else. But where there's smoke, there's often fire. And we know that he had a lot of cameras. We know that he kept dossiers on people. We know that the who's who of the powerful of the world visited there. And we know that there was sex crimes and victims and horrible things going on. And almost certainly somebody has those videos. And we also know that intelligence agencies do this kind of thing. And we know that both Epstein and Maxwell had ties with Israel. And it's also speculated, to be fair, it's speculated could be CIA, could be MI6, could be Britain. He had ties with them as well. Could just be, a perverted guy and a bunch of perverted, powerful people who wanted to hang around with him. That could be. But I think there's at least a good amount of evidence, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out. A lot of it's probably been burned, but it would be interesting to see what comes out on this, what the what we find out.
When you get when they released a lot of these documents, they were, what is it, redacted? You had these files, they were all blacked out. I mean, what is that? Why?
I don't know. There's various reasons they do that. Sometimes to protect victims. Sometimes it's to protect, they've said before, even Trump said that one reason he didn't want to release the so-called Epstein files is because there could be innocent people or say less guilty people involved. And there, to be fair, I'm trying to be as objective as I can. I mean, to be fair, that could be reasonable. You could, and there is a difference between somebody who is cheating on their wife, or maybe they're not even married. Maybe they're just, having sex with a consenting adult. That's a big difference from rape or a crime, or crimes involving children. There could be, a lot of people visited Epstein Island. They could have, maybe they didn't all do bad things. It's like, you could go to a party and there's drugs there. Doesn't mean you're using the drugs, or whatever. But, so there could be good to give them the benefit of the doubt. There could be good reasons that you would redact, even some of the powerful people involved, and certainly victims as well.
I got you. All right. I want to get your reaction. You also tweeted about this, the baby formula experiment. I want to watch this with you and get your reaction.
We don't have any formula around, darling. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. All right, thanks.
We unfortunately not. We have a benevolence program, but it is for our members. Well, like I said, if it's anything like that, our benevolence is for our members.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, we don't have any formula here for not baby. No, we have a kitchen, but we don't have milk. We don't have time to do that because we don't have nothing for senior citizen here, and we don't have nobody to do that, so you have to try to call another area.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, we're included in that, not because we want to be, but we've been struggling with a whole bunch of things since the Joe Biden regime took over.
And I was wanting to see if there's any way you all could help with a can of baby formula.
We can, ma'am. Where do you live? Do you live in Charlotte?
Yes, I'm like 10 minutes from you all.
Okay, and what kind of formula do you use?
It's the Good Start.
Good start. Yeah, that's fine, ma'am. If you come over here, we'll help you.
Your thoughts? You commented on this also. You tweeted about it. What were you thinking?
Yeah, it's a great video. It didn't surprise me at all. Anybody who knows Muslims knows that. I mean, I bet you the brother who answered the phone probably was, some people speculated, oh, they've done this a lot. And, that's probably why he asked what kind. He probably just said yes. I bet you he would pay himself. A lot of Muslims are very, very giving about exactly this kind of thing. So it didn't surprise me at all. I retweeted it like many people did, and it went very viral. I mean, I think my retweet had, I don't know, 40,000 views or something like that. Yeah, it didn't surprise me at all. I think it's unfortunate. I don't want to be seen as picking on churches or picking on Christians. There's a lot of great churches and great Christians, but it didn't surprise me at all. I think that that's something. I'm glad that it's gone viral, because I think it's something that people, the comments are wild because there's all kinds of haters and stuff, as there is with anything Islam related. But yeah, it didn't surprise me. I hope people get more exposure to it. Some people speculated it was fake. I'm glad the one you just showed the other responses too, because some people said they hadn't seen that. But yeah, that's what I mean. One of the big passions I have is trying to have more people understand Muslims and understand, it's not what they think. There is $1 billion propaganda effort to try and make Muslims look bad, and you've talked about these kind of things a lot. I agree with you. I don't like the term Islamist. I think, that's become like co-opted, like it's like, oh, the whole idea that there's like the bad ones and the good ones. And I mean, even in the wake of 9/11, the FBI themselves, they said, hey, listen, Muslims aren't bad, but we do need their help for the Muslims in their community that are sympathetic to terrorists, as if every Muslim has some cousin in the closet who's, strapping a bomb to himself, like, oh yeah, sure. Most of them aren't, but the terrorist ones are the ones we're concerned about, as if it's some sort of significant number. And it's not a significant number. It's not even a statistically relevant number. It's not, you go to your average, propaganda fed American, you say, how many Muslims are terrorists or sympathetic to terrorists? They're going to say, oh, I don't know, half, 40%. Even the so-called, accepting liberals will be like, oh, no, 90% are good. It's only 10% are bad. No, it's not 10% that are bad. It's not even 1%. It's not even 0.01%. It's a statistically irrelevant fraction. If a significant number of Muslims were terrorists or violent, they'd take over the world. There's 4 million in America. How many terrorist incidents have there been in America out of the 4, 5, 6 million Muslims that we have? How many have there been in the whole world? You go to these anti-Muslim hate sites, they're going to count murder, domestic violence, anything, even war under this broad, definition. And they're going to say, oh, there's 47,000 Muslim terrorist incidents. That's just nonsense. The real number is very, very, very small number, and it's comparable to crazy, insane people of any other religion. Christianity has the Lord's Resistance Army of Uganda, who chops off people's arms if they don't convert. They had Anders Breivik, who killed 70 people in a mass murder in the name of his religion. Crazy, horrible people exist. And yeah, sure, a couple of them are Muslims, but it's not some statistical significant number. And there's a vested interest in billions and billions of dollars of propaganda to make it seem like it's a significant number, so they can push war and violence and forever war and nonsense and invasions and death and destruction in Afghanistan and Iraq and Gaza. Because they want to dehumanize Muslims and make it seem like there's some sort of significant number that thinks crazy things. And that's why you have this, this term, Islamist, and you have this, Sharia paranoia. I mean, every day I see a dozen people. Oh, they want to bring Sharia. They can't even define Sharia. They don't even know what it means, and it does. Even Muslims don't even agree on what Sharia is and it means different things to different Muslims. And it basically means religious law. And there's some crazy Christians in the world. A lot of people say, well, Christians don't behead people. Well, of course they do. You have a little bit of a broad view. You look at failed states, you look at the world, you look at, you go down to MS-13, the gang is extremely violent and they're almost entirely Christian. We don't say, oh, the Christians are creeping into America and they're bringing their violence. It's a function of poverty. The people from Nicaragua are more poor and they have gangs, and they come through the border into Texas and California, and they commit crimes. It's not because they're Christian, just like the poor people from poor Muslim countries who are coming into Europe and committing crimes. It's not because they're Muslims. It's because they're from poor, dysfunctional places. And it's because the politicians fail. The politicians aren't doing their one job, which is to protect the people. They have those same immigrants are in UAE and there's no crime. Why is that? If Muslim immigrants caused crime, UAE would be the most dangerous place in the world. It's not. It's one of the safest places in the world because they respect laws. So yeah, there's a lot of, I've thought about that for a long, long time, especially after 9/11. But even before that, I was in the military during the first Gulf War, and I was lied to. I was lied to just like everybody else. They told us some of the stuff they're not even allowed to say anymore, and I won't repeat. Very bad slurs and things like that. Trying to push this first failed military misadventure in Iraq. So as a member of the U.S. Armed Services, I was lied to, and they taught us, all this nonsense to try and dehumanize people. Because if they can't dehumanize them, then people won't. They wouldn't support these forever wars. And there's a lot more people waking up now, and they're waking up to it. And the worst nightmare of the warmongers and the neocons and the people who push forever wars is that people wake up and realize that, exactly like this video shows, that Muslims are not the enemy. Muslims are not, out to push Sharia or believe these crazy things. Most people in America they don't have the slightest idea what Muslims believe. They don't know Muslims believe in Jesus. They don't believe that Allah is just an Arabic word for God, and that many, many Muslims who speak English say God, and that it's the same God of Abraham, and that Muslims believe in Noah and Moses. They have no idea about these things. They think Muslims believe that if they think infidel means Christian, and they think that Muslims believe if you kill infidels, you get 72 virgins or whatever nonsensical, horrible propaganda they've been fed. And people shouldn't. Some people who are surprisingly aware of the lies that the media, they know the media lied about Biden, they lie about Trump, they lie about 1/6, they lie about Epstein, they lie about everything. For some reason, they don't even believe the 9/11 narrative. They know that there's a lot of holes in the story, the official story, yet somehow they still are fooled by the propaganda. And I think the reason is because it's so insidious and it's very effective. You have organizations like Memory, who is an organization called Middle East Research Institute or something like that. But it's a funded effort. It's funded by former IDF people, ultra neocon type of people. And the job of Memory is to find the craziest, worst Muslims in the world. No matter how rare they are, they could be on a community television show with no viewers, and they'll find them. They'll find the imam who says the worst thing, and they'll put him on there and try and make it seem like this person is representative of 2 billion people. And when you see that again and again and again and again for 25 years, it seeps in. And a lot of people who are otherwise good people are very much fooled by this narrative. And that's on the right and the left. It's an interesting variation because I ran for office. I kind of study politics. I obviously spent a lot of times with Republicans, a lot of times with Democrats, but they're both fooled. They're both kind of fooled by this narrative, by this never-ending propaganda that we've had. That the goal is to dehumanize Muslims so that Americans will be willing to have their money stolen so that it can go to kill Muslims. Because if you don't dehumanize them, and you see a child dying in Gaza or Iraq or Afghanistan, and you see them as a child, a normal human is not going to support that. But if you can dehumanize them, that's the only way that the war machine survives.
Man, very, very solid points that you brought up. You ran for Senate. You talked about, I want to get your reaction when you see another current senator wasting time, resources. He's from Alabama, chasing a fake boogeyman on the taxpayer's dime.
Today, to talk about one of the greatest threats facing our country today, Islamic extremism. 24 years ago, September 11th, 2001, nearly 3,000 innocent Americans were murdered in a coordinated terrorist attack carried out by radical Islamic extremism. Those of us who lived through that day remember exactly where we were when those planes hit the buildings.
You're familiar with the senator from Alabama?
Yeah, and I'm familiar with his anti-Sharia campaign. These folks, and his opinions are not unique, unfortunately. These folks go into two categories. Mm-hmm. A category of people that are very, very easily fooled and shouldn't be fooled after all these years, and a category who's just been co-opted and bought out.
Two categories.
Two categories. Yeah. Some of them are good people that are fooled, and it's hard to tell. I always like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't know about Tommy Tuberville, because here's the thing: if you believe what they believe, you can't blame them. I would love to meet Tommy Robinson someday. I obviously disagree with him strongly on Islam, but if he believes what he says he believes, he does seem to be a genuine guy. I mean, in some ways, he's endearing. I can see why people like him, because he seems like a real guy. He seems like the kind of guy who'd be your neighbor and you'd hang out, and maybe I'd invite him over here and we watch a movie together. I wish we could, because giving him the benefit of the doubt, I think there's a chance if what he says is what he really believes, then he's been fooled. He's just wrong. He's just really, really wrong. And he's been fooled. And when you have billions and billions of dollars in propaganda trying to fool people, you can blame them for being wrong. It's still on them, but we don't have billions and billions of dollars in propaganda telling the truth, So I give people benefit of the doubt, because I know a lot of Republicans. I ran as a Republican. A lot of Republicans are fooled. By the way, like I say, left, they're fooled too. Different brand of fool. They tend to believe different things. It's different marketing. It's Coke versus Pepsi. The marketing people trying to fool each group will do a slightly different message. With the right, they try and appeal to American nationalism, Christianity a lot. These are barbarians versus our good way of life, this kind of thing. And if you're fooled by that, if you really did think that these bunch of crazy bearded men are going to come out of caves and they're going to, rape and destroy and bring Sharia, well, then you would probably be doing a good thing to fight them. The problem is that they're just fundamentally fooled. And I have hope. I would like to, I'd love to meet Tommy and try and tell him why he's wrong. And I'd love to meet Tommy Tuberville, this senator, and tell him why I think he's wrong. And I have talked to a lot of Republicans and people on the left as well about why they're wrong. Now, then there's the other category, like Ted Cruz, where he's just totally hopelessly co-opted. I don't think any amount of truth could change his opinion, because he's become an American second neocon. There's a lot of people who are America second. They want to put Israel before America, which is just very strange to me. I mean, I have a big, big, big problem with Israel's policies towards Gaza. I don't have a problem with especially the Israeli people who are against this. And I never historically had a problem with the country other than this, one extremely major thing. But the idea of putting it ahead of your own country, it's just very strange. It's strange to have so many members of Congress where they have a foreign flag. And it's just, if you said something, I tweeted a long time ago, I said, Portugal is our greatest ally. We must stand with Portugal no matter what. Anybody who speaks against Portugal is wrong. And people laughed because it just sounds weird. I mean, it's just a strange thing. Why would you Why would you do that? Portugal, Thailand, anybody? Why would you put any other country on such a pedestal that you have their flags in your offices and everything else? So there is some that are co-opted because there's a lot of money involved, there's a lot of power involved, and sadly, a lot of it is driven by people who are otherwise good people, but they're doing evil and supporting evil because they've been fooled. And you see that, like, one of the epicenters of it is New York. I've lived in New York City. I've worked in New York City. There's a lot of very, very anti-Muslim people in New York because they've been fooled by this propaganda narrative. And this senator, Tommy Tuberville, I don't know enough to know whether he's co-opted or fooled, but most people start as fooled. This idea of Sharia is usually when somebody mentions Sharia in an argument, it's usually a sign of low IQ. It's not like, this guy really knows his stuff, he's gonna get me. There's better arguments than others. The Sharia argument is particularly silly because where is this Sharia? Show me where, and you'll say, what do you think Sharia says? Oh, Sharia says beat women, kill gays, kill Christians and Jews, this. I say, well, where does it say that? Who says that? And that's where the argument falls apart. That's how deep it is. It's skin deep. At best they'll pull up some, memory video of some crazy imam who has 300 followers who says something stupid and say, aha, see this guy. Well, that doesn't mean it's Sharia. If you haven't noticed, there's a lot of Muslims who disagree on things. I mean, do you really think that the 4 or 5 million Muslims in this country believe this? It's just an absurd notion. Tommy Tuberville can't even tell you what Sharia is. It's a midwit level comment, and same with Greg Abbott in Texas, governor of Texas. They had Epic City that was going to go in there, and he says, no Sharia. People think that that's being intellectual. Maybe because it's a non-English word. Maybe they think like, oh, it's like all the people saying burqa. Like they learned what the burqa was, but 99% of the time it's not even a burqa. It's a hijab. They don't even know what burqa means, but they're like, stop the burqa. It's like maybe they think they sound intelligent because they're using a foreign word like Sharia. Stop the Sharia. Well, America has its own rules anyway. Even if Sharia is what you think it is, and it was written down, which it isn't, and if all the Muslims agree, which they don't, it wouldn't matter anyway, because America has its own rules. You can't kill gay people in America. That's illegal. And by the way, it's illegal in the UAE too. I do an event in the UAE every year, and I had a couple, propaganda fed midwits who says, well, I'm not going to the UAE. They're anti-gay. Like that's, their big intellectual contribution. But I looked through the actual law in the UAE. It's called the UAE Penal Code. There's not a single anti-gay law. There's an anti-cross-dressing rule, but there's no anti-gay law at all. There sure as heck is no idea they're going to kill gay people. This is just, again, propaganda, and the kind of thing that would make people believe that about a place like UAE, of all places. It just shows the power of the propaganda, the power that people believe this. And maybe this senator is one of them who's been fooled. A lot of people have been.
What do you advise his constituents? What can they do? Muslims in that area of Alabama, good people, just people who are like, hold on, this is my taxpayer money. I mean, we have real fish to fry. We have so many challenges. We have so many real issues that we got to deal with. And now this guy's wasting time, resources, and getting paid. We're paying him. So can they call his office? Can they set up a meeting? Try to, because this stuff is obviously easily debunked. What do you advise them to do instead of doing nothing?
That's a great idea. I think Muslims should be much more active in politics. I get it, why a lot aren't. A lot of Muslims feel politically homeless. I feel politically homeless in some ways. There's a whole bunch of things I can't stand about the Republican Party. I don't like the wokes and the left either. I think they're both terrible. And the third party options, a huge number of Muslims voted the Green Party, but that's kind of a wasted vote also. So I get it. I get it to the Muslims who don't want to be active because they don't feel like they have a home. but you can still, even if you don't even vote, you can still have your voice heard. You can write and call your congressman or your senator. If you can band together, even a group of 30 people or 50 people can make a difference. Because when they see a group, if you say, the Muslim activist voter group of Alabama or whatever, it's a little scary to politicians because they say, oh geez, this may only be 30 people, but I don't know. They might be
like
able
here,
to,
particularly in Alabama, that's where this senator is from. If they,
yes,
because how would they ban? So they would the local masjids, the mosques, they come together.
yeah, anybody with initiative, any Muslim can, or anybody non-Muslim too, but anybody can make a group and say, hey, here's my group.
How hard is it, or not hard, for them to set up a meeting with him in person? Is that something difficult? Can that happen?
Usually it's not that hard, especially if you have a group. The bigger the group, the easier it is. And if you could get somebody to align with you, like a university or something, or if you say, hey, we have 1,500 members, they're probably going to take your call. And if they see you as completely adversarial, it might be harder. But if you reach out, in a friendly way, yeah. And I think that more Muslims should be seen and be active in politics. Let people know that, it's friends and neighbors and, people in your community, people that they relate to, say, oh, gee, that dentist, that doctor, that, the masjid in my town. It's interesting because New Hampshire is very low Muslim population. And so, the masjids are magnets for every Muslim in the area. So the one in, nearby me, it's very, very, very diverse. It reflects kind of like Islam in America. There's some converts, there's Indonesians and Malaysians, there's Gulf Arabs, there's African Arabs, there's, African American Black Muslims from America, some converts, some not. So you have this quite a diverse group, and that's common in a lot of places, other than places like Dearborn, where it's a lot of Muslims. But most places in America, I think Alabama is probably similar to New Hampshire. And letting them know but that diversity is great, because if you go to that masjid on a Friday, you're going to see, oh, the guy who owns the Mercedes dealership is Muslim. The guy who owns a gas station is Muslim. The doctor, the real rich doctor, the guy who is not rich at all, who's cleaning the floors, this guy, you have a very diverse mix. And I wish politicians would go, and I wish they would go to mosques and see who the Muslims in their community are. It's the cartoon character version of the villain Muslims that they see on the propaganda is different than reality. Of course, they're not thinking of, oh, the nice Lebanese mom of my friend who makes that really, really delicious food, or the guy named Fahad who owns the car dealership. They're not thinking of that. They're thinking of the mustache twisting bearded guy in a cave who hates America because it's free, which is not a thing. Nobody hates America because it's free. I mean, it's not even a realistic villain. It's just a ridiculous cartoon character of something that doesn't exist. I don't know if anybody exists in the world who's sitting there saying, I hate. Imagine somebody being 10,000 miles away and saying, yes, my religion tells me that I hate America because it's free. Therefore, I want to kill them. Like, it's just like, come on, man. I like science fiction and comic books and stuff. I could come up with a better villain in 5 minutes. It's just not even believable on any, with any critical thinking whatsoever. I mean, make it about something real. At least, I mean, there's plenty of real things you could make a villain over that would be more believable. But that's the thing. You have a lot of people who believe in this cartoon character version of what they think Muslims are, and they're not seeing the Muslims in their community. And that would be good, to be seen in the community, invite politicians in. And I don't like to focus too much on politicians. I wish politicians had less power. I don't want to go groveling to them like some sort of slave. I'd rather have them leave us alone and be out of our lives and out of our business. But to the extent that they are doing stupid things like this clown Tommy Tuberville, you got to sort of hopefully set them straight. And also, you can push back hard if they're a true enemy, like a Ted Cruz or Greg Abbott in Texas. We have the law on our side. We have freedom of speech. You can tell, this guy Abbott saying, we will have absolutely no Sharia whatsoever. No, you won't. bro. You're in America. In America, we have freedom of speech and we have freedom of religion, and you have a right. Anybody has a right to follow whatever version of Sharia they want, and there's nothing you can do about it unless they commit a crime. And then it's the same as everybody else. If you want to kill a gay person, well, that's illegal. It doesn't matter if you're an extremist Christian or an extremist Muslim or an extremist atheist. You're not allowed to kill somebody. So it's irrelevant. It's a toothless, nonsensical argument designed to appeal to ignorant bigots. Mm-hmm. And it's a shame and it's embarrassing, especially as somebody who had a Republican, ticket on my name, and I'm still a member of the party. I think it's important to note there's very different types of Republicans. I'm like Thomas Massey is a very different type of thing than John McCain. But just the same, it's embarrassing for anybody to have this sort of level of bigotry. I know you see it even more than I do, which is a lot. The flippant ease with which people criticize a religion of 2 billion people based on total ignorance is shameful. And it's something that should be embarrassing, especially to people on the right, but also, like I said, plenty of people on the left have those issues as well.
Yeah, Tommy Macy, for those that don't know, he was not too long ago on the Tucker Carlson show, and he had explained to Tucker, he was shocked also, Tucker, that when Macy was describing that every congressman, senator, has an AIPAC handler. That's the Macy, correct? Yeah. Now,
and they visit every candidate too, but they didn't visit me, which I think is a good achievement.
Let's, before we conclude, just read a couple more of your tweets, and it's very, very refreshing after seeing hundreds, of anti-Muslim, anti-Islam tweets. And I'm always thinking, are these just bots? I'm thinking just keep popping up in your timeline. And then I see someone who's a critical thinker, someone who's a thinking man like yourself. And I said, wow, I'd love to talk to this man. And here we are. And this is one of those tweets here. You say, Taqiyya is invented by, and you guys can see this here at Bruce Fenton on X. And the tweet says, Taqiyya is invented by some dude 500 years after the founding of Islam. He came up with the idea right after a war relative to hiding who you are if you would be put in danger. The dude was in a minority sect of Islam that 90% of Muslims are not even a member of. Yeah, and this is a response to a person who was like, Bruce, don't fall for the Taqiyya. If you ask an average Muslim, you say, what is Taqiyya? They're like, we have no idea. And I remember talking to one scholar in Islam in the beginning when I first started practicing, and he said, no, this is not in the Quran or the Sunnah. Now, there is, and I don't know if you know, but just for the audience, there is even exceptions if you're, let's say, your wife cooks you some food and it's really bad, and then there's details of how you can go about these things, and you're allowed to say, why, my wife, it was great, even though she put too much salt, for example. Or you're trying to reconcile between two people, two brothers, let's say, they've been split apart, and you go back and say, look, man, he loves you, man. But he didn't say that, but he said he loves you. But to deceive someone, to deceive them and lie about your faith, to try to bring someone over, at the end, they're going to find out the truth that you were lying and you're just doing more major harm. It just makes no sense. But people are suspicious about Muslims because of this term has been thrown out, and they're just lying about everything. And I think people who follow a Machiavellian lifestyle, follow his teachings, are projecting onto us, which we are far from, because anybody who reads the Quran, they can just chat GPT this stuff, and they'll see how much it's about being truthful, about being honest, and how that quality of lying is something so despised and looked down upon in Islam. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a typical propaganda point. So this idea that because, like I say, somebody 500 years after Islam came up with this Taqiyya point. Okay, there's people now, the anti-Muslim hate sites are like, aha, Muslims invented lying and it's part of the religion and they all lie because of it. Like you said, there's a whole bunch of Muslims never even heard of this term. It's certainly not a thing that's taught. It's just an absurd notion to think that everybody in a religion lies, and that your proof of it is aha, I know this term Taqiyya. I am intellectual. I've figured it out. It's the same people like, who you use the word Sharia is just like, I mean, the other midway comment. Well, I've studied the Quran and it's very, very evil. No, you didn't study the Quran, bro. You went to an anti-Muslim hate site and you read the same stupid quotes that I've heard 10,000 times. Oh, kill them where they find them. Okay, did you read the words before that? No, you didn't, because he's talking about people who are attacking you if they keep attacking you. It's like, have some basic originality. It's just a silly midwit comment to be like, and it's brilliant. A lot of the propaganda is very sophisticated. You don't want to underestimate the power of it. When you see things again and again, it does have an effect on people. And if you say, well, the religion says to lie, then it makes it easy to discount anything. You make any argument in the world. You say Eddie's background is blue. Well, you know that they lie. It's in their official religion. And I said, no, it isn't. Well, you're lying about that too. These are clowns. I'm doing my Doug Murray impersonation there with the finger in you. Oh yes, like you're some sort of intellectual. They're not intellectuals. It's just a silly notion. It's right up there with the, they hate freedom. They hate America because it's free. This kind of thing. These are midwit, very, very low level arguments that, frankly, if they had more creativity, it would be more believable. But sadly, you hit it again and again and again and again, and people think that they're being intellectual and saying like, oh, Taqiyya says they're allowed to lie, therefore everything is a lie. That adds up, and it does have an effect on people. It shouldn't, because it's so ridiculous, but you hear it again and again and again enough. You have people that think it's true. And it's just another example of the kind of propaganda that this massive propaganda machine pushes, that makes people, think negative things about Muslims. And why? Because there's billions and billions of dollars at it. And Muslim is very decentralized. It's interesting. There's no pope in Islam. There's no, they don't have the centralization that you might have in other religions there. And because it's decentralized and there's a lot of different types of Muslims, it's harder to have like a unified front that says, no, this is nonsense. So when you have billions of dollars in propaganda trying to make Muslims look bad, and you don't have billions of dollars trying to tell the truth, you end up with a lot of, these kind of memes that's those comments. When I make a comment like, there's a few of them, this one and the other one that you mentioned, where if I say something positive about Islam and it goes viral, I'll get hundreds of the same comments, and it is almost like they're bots. They'll have the hate verses from the Quran, and they have this little it's the same screenshot 100 times. It's the same 12 quotes. The 12 quotes they're going to pick. The same things they're going to say. The ways they're going to try and insult the prophet. It is very, very predictable, because they've been programmed by propaganda. So in my case, the reason that I broke away from the propaganda was because I was exposed to it more, particularly, well, for one, there was two things. Early on, I've always been skeptical. My dad was in advertising, and he taught me the power of how everybody lies in ads and how to be skeptical. So I had a skeptical mind. I knew I was being lied to during the first Gulf War, because the lies were just so ridiculous. They hate America because we're free. I'm just, even as a 19-year-old sitting there in boot camp, I'm like, really? Come on. They hate us because we're free. Are you sure? It's nothing that we did in the whole world that would make anybody hate us. It's really because we're free, and your solution to that is to make us less free. So what? They don't hate us anymore? It just didn't jive with me. But as I learned more, and then eventually being exposed to real Muslims, and especially living in, I lived in Saudi Arabia for 7 years, and I have residency in the UAE, and I've met thousands and thousands of Muslims, and that, journey, I was really lucky, because I got to see, like, oh, wait a minute, these are not people that believe that they're going to strap on a car bomb and get 72 virgins. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. It's not, like I say, it's not 10%. It's not 1%. It's not even 0.1%. It's just not a thing. And, helping people break out of that cartoon character version of Islam is one of the most important things we can do. And it's hard, but you do great. I mean, you reach a huge audience, and I hope that a lot of people see it, and especially non-Muslims and people who, I like finding the common ground that we have. And it's particularly interesting in today's political climate. There's a lot of people, a lot of the fans of this senator that you showed, Tommy Tuberville. I know his kind of fans. I know the Republicans that would vote for him. A lot of them are good people who've just been fooled, and they have radically wrong ideas about it. Do you know a lot of people think Muslims are woke? They think Muslims are in favor of the LGBTQIA2S plus, because they associate Muslims with the left, and they think that. And interestingly, there's only a handful of Muslims that are in office, and most of them are on the left. But that's kind of coincidence.
There's a new one now, like Muslim Marxists. There are people calling them Marxists. Yeah. Have you heard that?
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
It's one of the interesting things about Mamdani is that people assume that because he's pro-trans, pro-woke, that's a Muslim thing. And he does have a lot of Muslim supporters, but overwhelmingly the Muslim supporters are saying, like, I don't like that stuff, but in spite of it, I'm going to support him because he's anti-Zionist. That's why he would get most Muslim support. It's certainly not a Muslim tenet for people to be woke, which is why a lot of them are naturally aligned with the Republicans, but they don't want to join with Republicans either, because you have a bunch of Ted Cruz's and Greg Abbott's talking about Sharia and saying that Islam doesn't belong in America, which is really unfortunate, because the values among a lot of the people on the right are very much Muslim values. A lot of, being anti-woke, pro-family, based tradition lifestyle. It's funny. Some of the most cutting edge influencers, they sound like imams from 100 years ago. Like the real cool cutting edge thing now is like, go work out, lift weights, grow a beard, eat meat, have a family, have a bunch of kids real young. It's like, well, yeah, that's about. I mean, you could be an imam with that speech, instead you're a social media influencer, So it is interesting. The political thing is interesting with the left particularly. There isn't many Republicans that have run for office, like I did. It's not a common thing. But it should be, but I don't blame them for not doing it, because who would want to be associated with a party with people like Ted Cruz and Tommy Tuberville? Mm-hmm. I don't blame. It's hard for me to go to Muslims and say, oh yeah, Republicans are the ones to go with, because they're just going to pull back and say, well, what about these 12 Republicans who are saying utterly ridiculous, Dick Cheney era propaganda? Dick Cheney's dead, but his propaganda from 25 years ago still lives on, and that propaganda is wrong. And that's why they fear people like me, or people like Tucker Carlson, people on the right who question the narrative, who say, gee, maybe the America Second policies are wrong, and maybe the whole dehumanization of 2 billion people is false also. And so the more people that realize that and wake up to that, then I think they'll understand the truth and probably find out that we have a lot more in common.
A lot more in common. Let's do one more before we conclude. You had a person, and this is very common. People say, "Oh, they denied Jesus. They denied Jesus as God. They call for submission to Islam. They call for jihad and murder of Christians and Jews." This reminds me of when I had a private conversation with Charlie Kirk on the phone. We spoke for about 45 minutes, and he was also someone who said, "I was taught to hate Islam." This is what he told me personally on the phone. And then he asked me questions like this. He asked me, he said, "Look, Eddie, I'm not trying to set you up or anything, and I want to go ahead and," he asked me very questions that you can tell where a person's at, how they've been kind of conditioned. And this is one of the things that imagine someone like Charlie Kirk, who's very intelligent, who's somebody who's, you think, he went to college, didn't finish college, but he's a very smart, common sense kind of guy. But when it comes to Islam, people like him and many others, they just became victims to this billion-dollar hate industry. So then you respond, Muslims are definitely do not deny Jesus or God. Obviously, Muslims believe in Jesus and the God of Abraham, Moses, and Noah. And then you talk about jihad, meaning the struggle, and strive. Muslims don't call for murder of Christians. This is what Charlie Kirk thought. Does your Quran teach the murder of Christians and to kill Christians? So you beautifully responded to this. You see a lot of this also, right? This kind of nonsense.
Yeah. And I try, that's a good example of trying to build bridges and show the common ground. A lot of people, it was funny. I told somebody one time, I said, Muslims believe in Jesus. She says, well, won't the other Muslims kill them if they find out? And I said, no, all of them believe in Jesus. She just didn't believe me. And when I was in Saudi Arabia, we were out in the desert and there's shells there. Somebody said, look, these are shells from the Great Flood. And there's some Christians with us. And I like that kind of common ground, finding those kind of things. And, the jihad word is misused just like Sharia, just like burqa, just like Taqiyya, jihad is misunderstood. People don't understand Muslims believe in Jesus. And the God is the same God. Now, a lot of people get really angry about that and argue about it. I don't want to spend a lot of time arguing with people about it, but it is undoubtable that Muslims believe in the God of Abraham. The footsteps of Abraham are right outside the Kaaba. And, it's definitely the same Abraham. Now, you could say there's all kinds of things you disagree with. I don't like focusing on differences. There's a lot more differences. This kind of the idea of Judeo-Christian, like, there's three branches of Abraham, Isaac and Ishmael, and there's three great religions that came from this same tree, but two of them are over here and one of them's over here. I don't like that idea. And our founding fathers didn't think that. Our founding fathers viewed it much more closely. And a lot of them were Unitarians, which is interesting because which is much closer to Islam. Their belief in the Trinity is they didn't really believe in the Trinity the way that many other Christians do. So they're kind of halfway there to being Muslims. But this idea that like, these two are, together versus these barbarians over here, that's propaganda. And that's relatively recent propaganda, probably mostly last 50 years. There's a lot of differences that the Jewish faith has with the nature of understanding of Jesus also. And if you want to focus on differences, you could focus on that. I don't think that's productive either. If you're a Christian, I think it's better to focus on the things that you do agree with. But it is the same God. You could say all 2 billion Muslims are wrong. Okay, that's fine. You could disagree with them all, but you can't deny that that's what they believe. You can't deny that they believe in the God of Abraham. It literally says Abraham. His footsteps are right there at the Kaaba. The Kaaba was the house of Abraham. It's where he preached. Noah, Moses, they're in the Islamic faith. It's again the kind of basic misunderstanding from a mountain of propaganda. And I hope that more it's hard for people, it's hard for Muslims to go out and reach out and talk to people. And also it's sometimes when something, one weakness I have in investing is once I'll learn something I don't know for 10 years and I'll take a year learning it. Once I learn it, I assume everybody learns it, and sometimes, going back to the basics makes sense. It was probably a great conversation with you. I disagreed with Charlie Kirk very strongly on Israel policy and on Islam. But I cried when he died and I was very sad and I went to his vigils. Because nobody should be killed over words. And I agreed with them a lot of stuff too. I agreed with them on the wokeism and on a lot of economic things and other stuff. And I really, really wished that I would have been able to talk to Charlie, because I would have wanted to talk to him about Islam, and I would have talked, and I can relate. I'm a bearded New Hampshire redneck gun-toting guy, veteran. I can reach people sometimes. It's harder for somebody to say that I'm, the guy who believes in 72 virgins or whatever, right? That I'm secretly using my Taqiyya to invade America or whatever. If I would have won, I would have been the first Muslim US senator. And because of, who I am and how I look and my background and stuff, I can sometimes reach people better. I can talk to other Republicans and say, hey man, you've been fed lies. You've been fed lies about 98 other topics. Why are you believing this one? Why are you believing Dick Cheney era propaganda from 20 something years ago? And I think that, I didn't know Charlie, but I know Charlie. I know his kind of people. I literally ran for office and met 1,000 people just like Charlie. And I know his supporters. I know some people who are very close to him. I know his friends. I know how he thinks. I know these folks. And like I say, most of them are good people. And I think and believe that he was just fooled. I don't think he was co-opted. I don't think he was a bad guy. If I believed the same thing that he did, maybe a different path. The world was different. I might have believed the lies that I was taught in the military. And I might have gone down a different path. And some people double down, double down, double down. Some people become an identity. They become Robert Spencer. You write a book on it, then you can never back down. It becomes part of your identity. Tommy Robinson is like probably this close. It'd be very hard, but you never know. Maybe he'll convert. But you can get to a point where it's harder to go back on what you say if you make it your identity. But for a lot of people, that they're still open-minded enough, you can tell them the truth and try and reach them. And I wish I could have done that with Charlie, because I think that he was always willing to listen, and that's one thing that everybody should respect about him, is what he did, especially on the college campuses, being able to take people and talk. And that's what we need to do. We need to just talk to people and say, hey, here's what I believe, here's what I don't believe, here's what Islam is and isn't. And maybe we get somewhere, and that's a way to chip through the propaganda, because you do need to spend 10 times as much to tell a lie versus the truth. The truth comes forward, and skeptical people who are intelligent people, they'll know a lie when they see it, and they can hopefully move forward and realize they've been lied to, just like I was.
Yeah, I wish someone like you. I was very close to meeting with him. We were in discussions to meet in person, but we have other Charlie Kirks out there right now, and it seems like many are, I don't know what it is, but when you invite them to sit and talk, it's like, I don't know, many, I mean, you're a Republican and you're brave and you're sitting and you're talking, and I think we're making history here where hopefully people will see this, and people like the Hajjaj twins and others out there will kind of take the opportunity now to talk to someone like you, a Republican, to talk with someone like me, who's an American, loves my country, instead of getting these talking points from the hate industry. Sit, talk, and go ahead. Let's ascertain what is the truth. And I commend you for that. Commend you for coming on and having a discussion.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, you're doing great work.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Tell us, before we conclude, we've got a couple minutes, what's with the Bitcoin market right now? What do you advise people to do with Bitcoin?
Well, it's sound money, and it ties to there's one of the most fascinating topics to me is the Muslims. All these Muslim Bitcoiner groups, and I have some friends. There's a couple of them. They probably make an interesting guess. There's some people who are like genuine scholars. I'm very far from a scholar. I wish I was, but there's people who are very, very knowledgeable about Islam, trained at Medina University and so on, and they're experts on Bitcoin. And I'm fascinated by the human freedom and human rights aspect and the intersection with Islam, because the fiat money, the dollar that we have, it's phony. It's printed from thin air. It's a scam. It's a scam. And the Quran is against scams. Scamming is not right. And if you have a guy that can just, or a woman, Janet Yellen, who can just print money from thin air and give it to war and for-profit prisons and cronies and, bad science and everything else, that's immoral and it's wrong. And it's actually deeply evil. We wouldn't have had the Iraq war without the fiat money printer system. And what Bitcoin is, it's like gold. It's like digital gold. It can't be printed from thin air. Janet Yellen and Jerome Powell and Christine Lagarde have no power to make more Bitcoin. It's governed by the laws of code and math. And that is a sound money that you can't take to do evil things. You have to ask somebody for it. And they're not going to give it to you to do another Iraq war or Afghanistan war. So it's more moral and ethical money that is not based on the scam of fiat. And it's interesting. Oh, I wish I knew his name. He's I believe he's a friend of Dr. Ali, who you had on recently. But there's a scholar. He's not a Bitcoin scholar. He's a much older gentleman, and he says fiat is haram. That's above my pay grade. In my heart, I feel that. I certainly can't argue it and quote hadiths and stuff about why. But to me, it seems like fiat money, the US dollar, is a scam. It's printed from thin air. It's based on debt. It's based on riba. There's people 10,000 times more intelligent than me who can actually make a solid Islamic case about that. But to me, at a base level, it is a scam. Whereas gold or digital gold, in the case of Bitcoin, is not. It's based on math and code. And there's nothing scammy about that. It was given away for free. Nobody got anything. It's not based on riba. It's not based on debt. And most importantly, you can't just print a button from thin air and print money to create wars all over the world. So Bitcoin is a moral money. I think it's an Islamic money. I think it's a moral and ethical money, forgetting the Islam angle. It is a moral and ethical form of money that can't be manipulated and printed from thin air like a lot of the other forms of money in the world. And that's a big deal. And that's why I think it has value, because it's outside the system. And whether people are Muslim or not, or on their right or on the left, interestingly, a lot of the people on the left understand this greatly. A lot of people on the left are like, hey, the whole system's broken. It's corrupt. The bankers get bailouts and bonuses, and government contractors and fat cats and on and on. Yeah, exactly. We just see the problem the solution differently. The problem, they're correct. The problem is the money's broken. The money is a scam. The money can be printed from thin air, just like a child. Like if you went to a 6-year-old child and said, don't you wish, you had a magic wand to just make money from thin air? That's not moral, because bad things end up being done with that money, and it devalues it robs everybody. Your price of milk and bread goes up because they're printing money from thin air to send it to Israel and send it to Ukraine and send it to for-profit prisons. And, Safdien, great Muslim brother who wrote the Bitcoin Standard. He wrote a book called the Fiat Standard, and he talks about all the problems with the US dollar that relate to this phony money. And my favorite chapter is the chapter on food. Even obesity tracks to this phony broken money. And it stands to me very reasonable that the message of God would say, riba, what's the exact verse? Riba makes you insane, basically. Is what it says in the Quran. And why? Why would God say this? I think it's reasonable to say that one of the most evil things on the planet is this fiat money system, this broken debt-based, riba-based system that causes war and destruction and for-profit prisons and never-ending forever wars and military misadventures in Iraq and Afghanistan and all kinds of other stupidity. If you show me some ridiculous study that says men can turn into women because they feel like it, that study is probably funded by government grants, which trace back to the fiat system. Safdien in his book talks about how even obesity tracks to corn syrup subsidies and these other things that all relate back to this broken, horrible, evil, absolutely destructive fiat system. And you can't underestimate the evil. You have a ton of viewers. You go to your viewers and you say, name the top 10 problems in the world in the last 20 years. They're going to say Israel. They're going to say Afghanistan. They're going to say Iraq. Some of them might say obesity. Some of them might say wokeism. Some of them might say bad junk science. Some of them might say, COVID tyranny. Whatever the problem is, they say, it all traces back to fiat. It all traces back to this broken, corrupt, riba-based system. And Bitcoin's an alternative to that. And like I say, even people who have no idea about religion, right or left, they understand that the system is broken. You could be a atheist on the left or the right, and you can still look at it and say, wait a minute, the guys who gave these bad, stupid loans in 2008 and all their banks were about to go under, they all made hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars from hundreds of billions of dollars in bailouts from a phony money system. Anybody can look at that and see that it's broken. The system is deeply, deeply broken. And gold was a great solution, but gold is not as easily in our digital world to move around as Bitcoin. So to me, that's what brought me into Bitcoin. It's not about number go up. I've been very fortunate and blessed. Thank God that I've been able to do well financially. But that's not the thing. What matters is breaking away from a broken, corrupt system that has been responsible for massive evil and massive death. And to me, that's what Bitcoin is about. And like I say, I'm not really even barely qualified to talk about this. There's a lot of people much smarter than me who could tell you all about it. But I would urge everybody to look into it if that resonates with you. Look at this. Look up the Fed, learn about the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve is a private corporation. It's not even part of the federal government. It's just a private corporation of a bunch of ultra rich and powerful banksters. And they have the ability to print money from thin air. I mean, that's a crazy system. So people should learn about the Fed. Ron Paul has been talking about that, former Congress member, been talking about that for 30, 40 years. Learn about the Fed, learn about the nature of money. A lot of us spend a lot of time thinking about money, but very few people, if you say, what is money? A lot of people can't answer that. And there's properties and principles about what makes money money. Can government just print it out of thin air? No, because if they could, Zimbabwe would be the richest country in the world. I have $1 trillion Zimbabwe note I carry around in my pocket. It's not worth anything because governments can't make money worth something. It has to be scarce and have other properties that gold has and that Bitcoin has. So yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it all kind of ties in with the human rights and the freedom and in my opinion, Islam as well.
Bruce Fenton at Bruce Fenton. Thank you so much for spending some time. I really enjoyed talking with you.
You too. Great to talk to you.
Hopefully we'll meet again.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.